This nation was founded as a Christian nationalist form of government built upon biblical Judeo-Christian principles.
No to all of that. This nation has a secular constitution. Everything about this country and the founding fathers, it was all secular. They all wanted it to be non-religious. In fact, most of the founding fathers were non-religious. I think John Adams is like one of the few exceptions to that. John Adams was a nutcase. Anyway, this is Brenda Kunneman, if you're unfamiliar. She's a televangelist, absolutely out of her head on Christian nationalism and extremist Christianity. Not standard Christianity, extremist Christianity. So I got some voicemails I want to listen to, see what they have to say. Check this one out.
Hi, Owen. My name is Salem from Virginia. I go by she, her pronouns. A few years ago, the church I used to go to had a Republican senator guest speak, and afterwards, we all prayed over his re-election. Wouldn't that be in violation of the Johnson Amendment, since we're praying over an election for a specific person? The church is doing that. Thank you for your time. Have a good evening. Bye.
Yeah, I appreciate the call. To my knowledge, the Johnson Amendment, if you don't know, or if anybody out there doesn't know, the Johnson Amendment is the amendment in U.S. tax code that basically says nonprofits are not allowed to explicitly endorse or oppose candidates or campaigns for office, for public office. Or they lose their tax-exempt status. That's it. They just have to, become a private company instead. Anyway, the Johnson Amendment was violated by doing that. Yes, it sounds like the situation you described, that sounds like it was a violation of the Johnson Amendment. Not having him come and speak, because he may not, he could be a pastor, feasibly. Maybe he was a pastor and he's visiting from a local church or something. I mean, if we wanted to fabricate an excuse. But praying over his re-election, that is illegal. But here's the thing. The justice system is very slow. The wheels of justice turn slow. And there's a concept of mootness in law, I've come to find. My wife is in law school, and that has kind of put me in a position where I'm around lawyers a lot. Because, at conferences and stuff, she knows all the lawyers around, the litigation attorneys and everything. Anyway, I hear about this stuff a lot. So the concept of mootness means, for example, there was a state that had "In God We Trust" on their license plates, I think, or some Jesus message, I don't remember. And American Atheists, I think, was suing over it. I think that might have gone forward, the lawsuit, and I think they're working on it right now. But hypothetically, let's say the state changed their license plates to not say "In God We Trust" anymore. If that had happened, if they had changed the law, then you can't sue over it anymore. American Atheists couldn't continue their lawsuit because it's moot. It doesn't matter. It doesn't say "In God We Trust" anymore. Personally, I think the concept of mootness is stupid. We should be able to set future precedent to prevent that kind of thing from happening in the future, right? But yeah, that's mootness. Mootness and standing are two complex subjects that I'm not really sure that I'm fully in favor of. I don't know. They have their place in the legal system, and people smarter than me, more knowledgeable and well-informed on the subject, have different opinions than me on mootness and standing. But I think mootness and standing should change a little bit. The point that I'm getting to is that it's a moot point. The pastor came, he prayed at your church prayed over his re-election, and now it's over. It's not a reoccurring problem that needs to be resolved because it happened and now it's not happening. That's the idea. So I think mootness would probably play into this. It seems like something that he would have to do habitually. But either way, it doesn't matter because the IRS is not prosecuting these cases. They're not pursuing this anyway. The Johnson Amendment is effectively dead. because nobody is, paying any attention to it. Thanks for the phone call. I appreciate it. It was pretty interesting. Nerical, state of Indiana has the option to put "In God We Trust" on their plates. Okay, maybe that's what happened. I don't remember. There was some situation where a state was forcing it, and then they changed it to having it optional. Maybe that was what happened. And I think American Atheist was like looking into it, tracking it. I don't have any idea now. It's been forever. Anyway, pretty interesting. Quick interjection, this won't take long. If you like what I do, I'd appreciate it if you watch the video to the end. YouTube bases video reach off of watch time, so watching even an extra minute makes the video go further. Liking and subscribing goes a long way too. Finally, it would be awesome if you guys checked out my Patreon. All links are in the description, of course. Okay, back to the video.
Hey, this is Steve in Arkansas, and I was just talking with someone where they were talking about about Salem witches, and I said, I don't even think there were witches. I mean, it would be kind of almost noble if a witch actually got burned or drowned, killed for being a witch, but I think it was just a power struggle, and someone just was in a theocracy. Salem was a theocracy. You just shamed someone, and in their case, they could kill them. And it reminded me of the Greg Locke video that you had like 2 years ago, where he called out people in his congregation, and then more. Why? To intimidate people. And I think, as our country is heading towards this theocracy, this is one of the really big problems with that, is the danger of being intimidated just with fear tactics, because you don't even need laws. You just sort of insinuate someone is of Satan and they get lynched. Anyway, love to have further insight from you.
Yeah, I appreciate it. It's an interesting subject. I wanted to touch on the Salem witch trials, just talk about it for a second, because I bet there's some information that a lot of people aren't aware of. I actually looked into it the other day, and I found some stuff out. But for the record, the caller was talking about this video from Greg Locke where he went on a witch hunt. This is from February 13th, 2022.
We got first and last names of 6 witches that are in our church. And you know what's strange? 3 of you are in this room right now.
It was false. The whole situation exploded, and we found out that he's talking about 2 people that he didn't like. And this was genuinely just a power struggle type of situation. And he claimed that they were witches so that he could get them out of his church, it seemed to me. Because this woman was, she insisted that Greg Locke stop talking to these people because they're not Jesus-y enough, and Greg Locke didn't like that, so he called them witches, basically.
Three of you in the room right now. You better look in my eyeballs. We ain't afraid of you, you stinking witch. You devil-worshiping Satanist witch.
By the way, just for the record, Greg Locke believes that he is capable of everything that a witch is capable of. He just gets his power from Jesus rather than from Satan or wherever he thinks witches get their power. So he's kind of like witches for Jesus, right? That's kind of the idea here. That's what he is. He's a witch for Jesus. And what makes it even more interesting is that people can be doing all of this stuff, divination, fortune telling. They can be casting things out and so on. And it turns out it wasn't Jesus giving them that power. It was Satan. And Greg Locke knows that because he doesn't like that person. He doesn't think that they're valid, or they did something he doesn't trust. And just like that, they're witches. Just like that. They're doing everything that he's doing, casting out demons and all that other junk, but they're getting their power elsewhere. So they're witches. Fascinating. It's a fascinating little way to demonize somebody and impose rules on them and enforce those rules.
We cast you out in the name of Jesus Christ. We break your spells. We break your curse. We got your first name. We got your last name. We even got an address for one of you.
He was at their house just like 2 nights before this, eating dinner with him, and they pissed him off. It's a husband and wife. They pissed him off by telling him they didn't like Clay Clark and the fact that they thought that Clay Clark was a fake Christian that was using witchcraft, basically. and they said that they thought that he should get away from him. The Reawaken America tour, Donald Trump tour. And Greg Locke just like that said, okay, well, they're witches. Quick note before we continue, I want to let you know I just wrote a book. If you want to check it out, owenmorgan.com/book. It's a book about my experiences within Jehovah's Witnesses. It's completely understandable if you know nothing about Jehovah's Witnesses. And if you're a Christian, it's a good reference to use for why Jehovah's Witnesses are wrong about their interpretation of the Bible. The last chapter of the book is 100 questions that I have for the governing body. I'm selling the last chapter separately as its own separate guide if you guys want to get that too. So check it out, owenmorgan.com/book. I'd appreciate that. You know, he said, thank you so much for the lovely meal. It was great coming over to your home. They were on his security team. They were his personal trainers. And they were involved in the church for like 10 months or something, and involved in the security stuff for 8 months, I believe. And just like that, the very next Sunday, he comes up here and starts calling them witches. They had no idea that this is going to happen. It's nuts. Anyway, yeah, thank you for the phone call about that. About the Salem witch trials, though, I don't know how many people knew this, but it turns out that the basis for the witch trials were almost certainly, as the caller said, it was probably it was a power struggle. But turns out that there was something called ergo, I think, ERGOT is how it's pronounced, ergo. Ergo, I believe, was growing on rye bread, and ergo, or whatever, is a key ingredient in LSD. So when they used this bread or this wheat or whatever to bake a cake or to cook some kind of food or whatever, they brought it to somebody and they ate it and they started hallucinating. And they thought that they were poisoned. They thought that, they were a witch that was forcing powers on them and so on. That was really the basis of the witch hunt. But suddenly everybody is a witch. Any single person can be a witch if you look hard enough, Anyway, I just want to read this article real quick. How rye bread may have caused the Salem witch trials. This is on Encyclopedia Britannica, Britannica.com. I have a little browser extension that tells me if a website is credible or not. Let's see. The rating on this one is source is credible. I mean, it's Encyclopedia Britannica. Of course it is. How rye bread may have caused the Salem witch trials. In 1692, the small Puritan village of Salem, Massachusetts, was plagued by a sudden and brief cloud of witchcraft accusations. After young girls Betty Paris and Abigail Williams exhibited severe convulsions and other strange symptoms, village doctor William Griggs diagnosed them as having been bewitched. Wow, great doctor, thank you. Soon after, their townspeople began showing similar symptoms. That's when the accusations started flying. Again, anybody can be a witch. That's the problem with the witch hunt. That's why we have the term witch hunt, because you can dig up anything that justifies your belief that this person is practicing divination or something. Find something in their past to justify it. Soon after, other townspeople began showing similar symptoms. That's when the accusations started flying. The town quickly decided that they were going to search for and execute all the witches of Salem. By the end of the trials in May 1693, that's about 75 to 100 years before, the Revolutionary War and the official ratification of the Constitution. 95 years before, I think. 19 people by May 1693, 19 people had been hanged. 1 had been crushed by stones, my God, and 4 had died in prison, all accused of being witches. 300 years later, we're still asking, did witches really haunt the town of Salem? Or was another devil at work? No, I'm not asking that. Are people asking that? In 1976, Dr. Linda Caporiel of the Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute found evidence that supported the latter hypothesis, another devil at work. Caporiel, I guess, proposed that perhaps the brief and intense illness suffered by so many of the townspeople were not bewitchment, but rather ergoism, a disease commonly contracted by rye. Later, other historians agreed. Ergoism was not only an interesting theory, but also had some footing. Could all of the crazy happenings in Salem really be explained by some rotted rye? Interesting. I was told that it was because it was causing hallucinations. I didn't know it was convulsions. Surprisingly, a lot of them can, with the exception of a few events, which are typically attributed to groupthink and the power of suggestion. The behavior exhibited in 1692 fits the bill of rye-induced ergoism. Ergoism forms in rye after a severe winter and a damp spring, conditions that Caporael and other historians claim were present in 1691, and therefore affected the rye harvested for consumption in 1692. After the rye plant contracts ergo, the fungus grows and replaces shoots with the grain, on the grain with Sclerotia. Yeah, again, ergo is the basis for LSD. LSA from morning glory seeds can also be used to make LSD. Ergo sclerotia are purple-black growths that contain lysergic acid. There you go. And ergoamine. Lysergic acid is the basis for it, because LSD stands for lysergic acid diethylamine. That's LSD. That's acid. Since medical knowledge was sparse, the presence of darker shoots on rye was probably thought to be the product of overexposure to the sun, so it was most likely eaten despite being poisonous. Once contracted from rye bread, ergoism, called St. Anthony's fire, causes severe convulsions, muscle spasms, delusions, the sensation of crawling under the skin, wow, and in extreme cases, gangrene of the extremities. Holy Christ, dude. Wow, that's nuts. Severe hallucinations can also be a symptom, as lysergic acid is the substance from which the drug LSD is synthesized. These symptoms were the same as those shown by the accused in Salem, mostly young girls whose immune systems had not fully developed, leaving them susceptible to disease such as ergoism. Anyway, that's the basis for the idea that, they all did a bunch of acid, basically, and poisoned themselves and believed that somebody in the town was a witch. I see somebody said St. Elmo's fire in the chat. St. Elmo's fire is a phenomenon where a ship will be sailing through the seas, and all of the points on the ship will light up with electricity, basically. They'll glow with electricity. It's pretty cool, actually. I don't remember why it happens. I looked into it forever ago, but apparently it's a band from the 80s also. It's hard to capture on film, but you can. Here's a depiction of it. And yeah, it happens when you're way out in the ocean. It's pretty fascinating. You should read about it sometime. St. Elmo's fire. Yeah, very different. Anyway, yeah, thank you for the phone call. I appreciate that.
Hi, Owen. This is Tim. I actually like what you do and agree with your political views for the most part. I'm 64 years old and have moved to the left as I have gotten older for a reason. It's because I look at knowledge and facts, and you're right. The far right has gone off the extreme deep end, and it needs to be exposed. So keep doing what you're doing. And
I appreciate that.
And I will disagree with you on one thing as far as Mitt Romney having any integrity. He doesn't really. And if you look at his campaign, he was just as big of a pathological liar, almost as Donald Trump. But by comparison, of course, he pales. Anyway, have a great one. Keep doing what you're doing. Thanks.
I appreciate that. Well, I think the difference between Donald Trump and Mitt Romney is that Mitt Romney does adhere to a moral system. Now, he might have an ends justify the means mentality where he's willing to do whatever it takes to get where he wants to be, but he believes in honesty. That's part of his moral system. I mean, honesty to some degree. Like, he believes in, oh God, what's the term? I can't think of the term I'm looking for here, but Mitt Romney believes in some kind of moral system. Donald Trump believes in Donald Trump, and that's it. No more, no less. He doesn't have a moral system. Trump doesn't. I don't believe. I don't think he's Christian. I don't think he's anti-abortion. I don't even think he's anti-gay. I think he does whatever is beneficial to him, whatever the cost. However he can come out ahead in this situation, he'll do it. Mitt Romney is different. Yeah, he did tell lies and things, but it's a little bit different. There's a different tinge to it, if you will. I don't know how else to say it. Anyway, I don't think Mitt Romney is good by any stretch of the imagination. I don't want Mitt Romney or any of that. I just think that he's a little better than Trump.
Hey, Owen, this is Jolene from Alabama. I'm kind of grieving my grandmother right now, and I'm also deconverting from religion. I was wondering if there was any advice that you could give to help better process this in a non-religious lens and to better support my family. Thanks, Owen. See ya.
Yeah, I appreciate the phone call. The advice that I can give is limited, and I've given this advice before, but I'll say it again. I lost my grandmother in 2022, September 2022, and it was pretty rough, you know? It's not easy to be an atheist. It's not easy to not believe that she's going to be on the other side waiting for me or whatever. It's hard. So how do you deal with it? The way that I deal with it is I try to take some kind of, all right, let me put it this way. Here's how I deal with it. They say that you die twice. Once when, you know, you take your last breath, and a second time when your name is spoken for the last time, or maybe even a third time when your influence completely passes through and there's no more, you have no more influence on the world. It's all completely gone. When my grandmother died, I put a concerted effort into adopting, but first of all, keeping a physical item. I feel like that's important, a physical item of the person. Second, finding some tradition that the person did, or some little thing, a phrase that they use, or something, a mannerism, and adopt it. You know, my grandmother played gag gifts at Christmas. Some people call it White Elephant. Some people call it Dirty Santa, I think. Anyway, yeah, she played that at Christmas. Like, that's an example of a tradition that a family can carry on in honor of the person. So let that tradition carry on through you and reflect the good parts. Oh, my cat is just like, has decided that she wants to be over here in the corner. What are you doing? Just try to find a way to like integrate that, you know, personality trait or that tradition or that whatever into your own life. My grandmother was, you know, she embodied the values that Jesus espoused, the real values that Jesus espoused, not the ones that these fictitious fictitious Christians like to believe about him, like hating gay people, hating the poor, hating this and hating that. Now, Jesus loved everybody, cared for everybody, no matter what. If they were hungry, he'd find a way to feed them. If they were thirsty, he would get them water. If they were in jail, he'd come visit them. That was what my grandmother was like. And I'm going to carry on the tradition of displaying those traits, those personality traits. I'm going to try to mimic that to the best of my ability, thus carrying on her legacy, what she left behind. You know, that's the best you can do. It's hard to deal with. It's not fun. Like I said, it's hard to be an atheist. It is not an easy thing. I you know, a lot of people wouldn't choose it if it was up to them because it's so hard to get through the other side. But here we are, right? Anyway, good luck dealing with it. I'm sorry you have to deal with that. And yeah, give me a call. Let me know how things are going, because this is actually a little bit of an older voicemail. Hopefully things are going well. 1-800-701-8573 if you guys want to call in.